So thank you, everyone. We have returned to open council meeting. Point 3 late items. Do we have any late items? I don't think so. Public input. Any public input? No. Good. 5.1 adoption of minutes. Special council meeting minutes, May 7th, 2024. Recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting held on May 7th, 2024 be adopted. Councillor Baxter, Councillor Egan. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed. Delegations and recognitions. Recognitions. We have 6.1 draft 2023 audited financial statements presented by Mr. Mario Perotti of BDO Auditors. Here, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to be here to present the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023. Am I able to have the PowerPoint up now? So I've prepared a brief PowerPoint to run you through the financial statement highlights, but it's important to remember that the financial statements are still marked as draft in your council package because I cannot sign off on financial statements till Mayor and Council has had a chance to review and approve the financial statements. If it's Council's pleasure to approve the financial statements, we will be issuing a unmodified opinion this evening. Perfect. So if we can go to the next page, please. So we are issuing, in our opinion, these statements do present fairly the results of the City of Merritt for December 31st, 2023. And if we go to the next slide, we have our statement of financial position. So a snapshot of all of your assets and liabilities at the end of the year. And of course, given the significant recovery operations and capital projects that we have happening, we are seeing some large increases in your financial assets, up from 50.7 million to 64 million. Large part of the increase is just grants that have been received in advance of the construction work occurring. But if we look at our total liabilities did increase. If we exclude our Municipal Finance Authority debt, the liabilities increased from 34.8 million to 46.7 million. And so again, that as we have cash that was received for capital projects that haven't moved forward, we see the other side as deferred revenue showing up in your liabilities. If we could just jump back up quickly. The item to highlight though is net financial position. So the net financial position measures if we were to settle all of our obligations tomorrow, what would we have left to service the residents of Merritt, and that has increased from 7.9 million up to 9.1 million dollars. Now we'll go to the next slide. And so we show here our statement of operations. So this is your revenues with comparison of budgets to actuals. Total revenues came in at 43.1 million over budget by 40.4 million. Now you can see that government grants and transfers is the largest number there, slightly under budget. It came in at 18.3 million versus a budget of nearly 22 million dollars. Important to remember that although we have significant capital funding for the recovery operations in there, we also have the unbudgeted Growing Communities Fund of 2.9 million dollars that is included in that. So if that were to be removed, you would have been short on budget by about 5 million dollars. But it doesn't create any deficits because if the grant funding was received, capital project didn't move forward. So revenue and expenses both decreased. We also show insurance proceeds of 4.3 million, up from 2.2 million as well. And now as we slide down to the next slide, just showing, this breaks down when we talk about the 43 million dollars, the revenues by where it's coming from. You see nearly half of it is coming from your government grants. Of course, as recovery comes to a close in the coming years, then that number will shrink back down and we'll see that larger piece of taxation that you'll be reliant on going forward. If we go to the next slide, total expenses came in at 24.5 million versus a budget of 23.2 million. And really everything was fairly close to budget, except for the recovery came in at 3.5 million versus a budget of 1.1 million dollars in operating. But that's also a function of, some of that would have been items that were determined when we prepared the financial statements to be operating that would have otherwise been capital in your budget. So while we're showing that you were over budget there, really it's more of a capital versus operating issue for you. So the next slide takes us to just showing your revenue or your expenses broken down by type. And we could see that subcontractors and goods and services is what's making up over half of your expenses, which is not surprising to be skewed because of your current state. So the next slide, we now get to your annual surplus. And so you came in with an annual surplus of $18.5 million, but it's important to remember that that's for accounting purposes. When you prepare your budget and you determine that you're going to have a balanced budget, you are deducting capital projects as an expense in your budget, reserve transfers of revenue and expenses in your budget. On the financial statements, capital projects become an asset. They're not deducted as an expense, so it automatically creates this surplus, even though you have been spending the money. But this slide shows you how you did against really a cash budget in the year. If we take our annual surplus of 18.5 million, deduct our capital projects of 20.9 million, add back depreciation, which is not funded, we come to a net change in financial position of $1.1 million, which is really what your surplus from a cash basis for the year was, and is more comparable to what you had budgeted. Now, moving to the next slide. Hopefully everybody can see that, but in your council package, that is also included on page. Or just get that back in front of me so I can read it. On page 19 of the financial statements. You have a bit of a congratulations. You broke $100 million in surplus this year. Unfortunately, that does not represent what is in the bank for you. So when the accountants say that you have $101 million accumulated surplus, it's important to remember that $84 million of that is what we call invested in tangible capital assets. And that number represents what you've historically spent on all of your infrastructure, less depreciation, less what you owe on it in terms of debt. So of that 101, $84 million is what is sitting in there. That number over the next 2 years is going to grow significantly as you execute on your recovery and you rebuild your infrastructure. So again, it's important to remember context when we see that number, that although you have $101 million, there's only $17 million in your reserves. 9.8 million of that is unrestricted. Numbers stayed fairly steady over the past 5 to 6 years. The unrestricted represents what management can use to execute against the budget and deliver services to the residents. Then we have your reserve funds, which is money that's been set aside by council, and it's staying at $7.4 million this year, up from $5.4 million last year. The largest swings in there is we see Growing Communities Fund, the unspent 1.5 million from that 2.9 is in there. We also see Community Works Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, at 3.2 million. And then the last item, interest funded infrastructure reserve of $540,000. That is money that the province requires you to set aside for, you're required to invest the grants that you've been given and have not spent. And that money has been set aside in a reserve fund to be used for the purposes of the grants. And that for 2013 was $540,000. Very quick tour on that, but before we talk audit results, are there any questions that council would like to have in the open session? Great, hearing none, we'll just move to the last slide and just, again, talking about the audit results, and the audit is completed. We are 2 months earlier than we were last year, even though there was significantly more activity within the city this year. And we could see a lot of effort going into the recovery areas and the amount of funds that are flowing through there. Spent a lot of time testing those areas. And I know that your director of finance also spent significant of time working through that. Then the other item, just highlighting one of the significant areas that of risk is when we look at any organization, key management, and those charged with governance, being mayor and council, can always extract influence, and so they can circumvent the control environment. So we go in and make sure that we're looking at transactions that, whether it's Merritt Council's expense reports, management's payroll, management's expense reports, and those types of things, to make sure that we were satisfied that there were no irregularities there and there were none identified. All in all, I would like to thank the team that you have here. They did a great job of helping my team get the work done, and happy to be back on schedule for these audits this year.
Thank you, Mr. Perotti. Any questions, Mr. Perotti, at all? And again, thank you to Kevin and your team for doing a great job. I know it was a little tough to present what was presented, so thank you, CAO. And thank you for council for wading through it and making the choices that have to be made. So we'll continue to do that. So thank you very much. Now for about the 18th time, I'll say drive safely. So
Yes, thank you.
thank you. So we have a recommendation. Recommendation of the council in accordance with section 167 of the community charter, accept the city of Merritt consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023. Councillor Baxter, Councillor Charney, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 6.2, Base Coast, Miss Anna, Hiller to present. Always enjoy this little part of our year. So come on up, press that button and pull the mic up there a little bit. There you go. And we hand it over to you.
All right. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you so much for having us back. We love coming in here and talking to you. So we know it's hockey night, so we're just going to briefly remind you about Base Coast. I was going to wear my Canucks hat, but I didn't know. So we wanted to start off by just letting you know we are sold out again. We've sold out of every show that we've done in Merritt, with the exception of the first show, but we call that a transition year. So really excited about that.
We respectfully acknowledge that the festival grounds are located on the traditional and ancestral unceded territories of the Patmok and Sands people. And we, throughout the years, have different involvement with different bands. One of the really important things to us is the Coldwater River, as from what we hear is very important to all the community. I just wanted to note that that's always at the forefront of our minds to keep that clean and people safe and the fish safe. Next slide.
So I'm Liz Thompson. I'm the co-founder and art director. Andrea wanted to say hi. She is other co-founder and music director. She's a famous DJ and was DJing in a cave somewhere in the middle of America. So she's not here, but she'll be here later in the week.
And I'm Anna Hillier. I'm the production manager.
And we just wanted to start by saying too that we do surveys every year and do a lot of community feedback. And one of the things that everybody always says is just how welcome they feel in Merritt. And that takes the entire town welcoming in our community. And we just wanted to thank you because we really do feel welcome here. And it's exciting that we're continuing to have so much success.
This is a photo of our main stage. We are playing on it. So 2024 is the 16th year of Base Coast, which is very exciting for us. And it's our 12th year in Merritt.
And this is just an example of some of the stage environments on site. We're world renowned for our audio visual environments. So they're unique to any other festival on the planet. And this is two of the stages that happen right in your front backyard. If you know anybody that wants to come, we do sell reduced priced locals tickets. So even though we're sold out, we still have tickets for locals at the board shop.
I think most of you know, but for those that don't, so Base Coast is a thoughtfully curated both boutique art, music and art festival. We're independent, so we have no corporate sponsorship. And it's a 4-day festival. Audience comes from all over the world, as do the artists. We have 5 stages, over 120 performers, 50 art installations, and 60 workshops, which are like yoga, movement, and different topical workshops that people can learn about things.
And everything's free once you're on site. Every year we change our theme. Our theme,
Except for the food.
except for the food. Yeah,
And at the
Oh.
bars.
yeah.
Sorry. We had that
Workshops
on,
are free.
so, you know, we had that part on record until you cleared it up.
So every year we change our theme. This year's theme is reflection, and it has a sustainability focus, reuse, repurpose, reflect. Just encouraging all of our guests to use what they already have and not go create a bigger footprint just because they're attending a festival. And that's our theme. And this is some examples. We have a very successful art grant program, which always has a few Merritt locals apply and come in, and people will either be in the beginning of their art careers or they might be professional installation artists. And these are some of the headliners that are going to be showcased at the exhibit this year, which we haven't been able to find a larger outdoor exhibit of installation art in Canada. So we're really proud of the program, and it's definitely one of the things that gains a lot of momentum every year.
So when we have to spend money, we love spending it in Merritt. So we do a survey every year with our attendees, and just some of the economic impact that happens at Merritt is 3 million on the visitor spend, 3.8 on the total Merritt economic impact, and 4.8 spending within BC.
Again, sustainability has been one of our core founding principles. These are some of the things we do. It's outlined in detail on basecoast.ca, but we just wanted to highlight that the river is always at the top of our awareness. We do a lot of education on site, and we know, like Anna said, it's important to everybody in the community. So it's very important to us too.
Every year since we've been here, we've made different donations to different organizations over the year. This past year, we made a significant donation to the food bank because they had some significant projects that they're working on. I'm supporting them and all of the organizations that we've supported in the past. And we really lean on you, the community, to let us know what's going on in your town. We're not here as much as we would like to be. So if you know of any projects over the year, please feel free to email us at any time. Actually assess at the end of our year, at the end of the summer.
There's lots of ways for people to get involved. You can volunteer. There's paid positions advertised on basecoast.ca. We're still looking for some local drivers, vehicles, equipment rentals, vacation rentals. So if you are involved with or know of a business that might want to get in contact us, that would be mutually beneficial, you can just email info@basecoast.ca at any time and connect us.
And you are invited for a walkthrough on Thursday, July 11th, which is one of our early entry days. So we invite usually through the Chamber of Commerce and through the City Council and some other business connections. We get them to send out an invite to those who want to come for a tour. We usually do a tour of all of the art grants, which are still in construction mode, but it's a great opportunity to see everything that's happening at the festival site. And then the folks that join us on that walkthrough are welcome to stay for the evening program.
And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you, and always a pleasure to see you here. I would say welcome home, but you pretty much are Merritt residents now, so glad to see you back again. We're very always impressed in how the festival runs and how well it's managed and how you know, the reviews we get. And so I've always said, and I think I've said this to you about 100 times, that if people are running a festival, they should contact you guys because you know how to do it correctly. So we never worry when you come to town. We know that we're in good hands when you're here, and we appreciate you bringing this to us. And we find your patrons to be very respectful of our community. And you know, our CNP isn't arresting 100 people a day like in some other things. So no, I do appreciate everything that you guys do, and to think of us and bring this to us every year, because we really do look forward to it. And Councilor Egan.
Yeah, thank you. And I do appreciate your group as well. The one thing I was wondering is how much in advance do you have to be up there to set everything up?
We actually start tomorrow morning.
Oh, wow.
So we're here for a week. We come for the May long weekend and just get a head start on some of the bigger projects, the stage builds, some of the new carpentry projects that we're doing for the year. You know, and some like assessing the land because it can change from year to year, and just getting like our bearings. It's kind of like a dress rehearsal.
And
Well,
then
that's
we come back-
amazing. I'm on a constant email list of yours, so I hear all the things that are going on and when you're sold out and, oh, you were almost sold out last September. You
Mhm.
know, it's amazing. You're doing great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Petrosi.
I was just looking at my calendar, so the dates are the eleventh to the 14th, correct? Yes.
Yeah, so 12, officially 12 to the 15th.
Oh,
and
okay.
We have early entry starting on Wednesday,
Okay.
so that's the 10th.
I missed the tour last year. I really want to take part in the
Okay.
tour this year and yeah, check
Yeah,
out the.
so on the
so-
11th.
Okay,
It usually starts in the afternoon and we will announce that. We'll make sure you know within the month.
perfect. Thank you.
The tour was awesome. I enjoyed it last year. It's really neat to see the installations going up. And what I like about the fact is when we do stop, your tour guides are really great. They're very knowledgeable and bubbly. What I like is the fact is you watch them set up, they explain how they're setting up, why they're setting up, and what drove them to create this piece of installation. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the end of it. I really wanted to see that neon light one last year, but I didn't get, but
That's so
it's pretty
cool.
incredible. And it's really neat to get their stories as they're setting it up. So, and again, everybody takes a moment to say hello and explain everything to us. So, yeah, I really enjoy the walkthroughs. I never miss them. I think they're just awesome. Anyone else? Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. And we wish you the best on the festival and looking forward to seeing you up there and here. So,
Okay, great.
thank
Go
you.
Canucks, go.
Thank you. Unfinished business, bylaw 2370, City of Merritt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw. We have three recommendations, and I'll just read the first one. Recommendation that the City of Merritt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 2370222024 is read a first time. Councillor Petrosi. Councillor Richard. Now I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Rogan.
Thank you. So could that be possible for Mr. Rick to provide a quick summary of where we are right now with that bylaw? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. So where we're at is, I guess, must have been what, springish of 20, where are we at now, 24, 23. Grant got announced finally that provided funding for the water meter project that was previously endorsed by, would have been the previous council, I guess, for applying for the grants. So we've been working a little bit over the last little while, trying to sort out the sort of technology side of this and where we want to go, because it was a bit of a surprise that the grant came after a couple of times of not being successful, from what I understand. So we've got most of the technology side of this organized. We're getting ready to go to RFP for the actual installation to happen over the next 2 to 3 years in phases. And we've also been doing that contest that I'm sure you're all aware of, trying to get a good idea of what people have in their houses. I think overall, we're probably going to find, because the bylaw used to require up to about 2021 meters to go into houses, we're probably going to find we have a lot more meters than we think we do. It's just whether or not the technology is going to fit with what we have. So the grant was applied for basically on new technology meters throughout the city. And we're looking at a remote reporting system with towers and whatnot to make this all work and report back to the mothership, as it were. So I would expect that we'll go to RFP here shortly. Hopefully get some installation started this year, and it's probably going to be like I said, maybe 2, maybe 3 years before we're completely done all the installations.
Well,
So we are talking about water meters for new buildings, correct?
So for this bylaw amendment, yes. And then the water meter project, which is funded, is a separate thing. So this bylaw is requiring new builds, previously required new builds to have water meters. It was removed in 2021. 2021. And so we're asking for it to go back in because we are anticipating that all residences will have meters in the next 3 years. And so right now we would like people to start metering their new builds, just like they did pre-2021.
So Last question, so, CAO, so do we know the reason why it was removed in 2021?
Counselor Richard,
Council.
Counselor Richard.
So we had a counselor who was also a realtor at the time. And they were not happy that they had to spend money on putting a water meter in. And so it was kind of lobbied that we would remove it. Even though that during our council term, we ended up applying for a grant because of the way it was going with the environment. But that's what happened. And because the technology would have to be updated anyway, so if you built a house in 1995 and you put a water meter in, it would have to be updated, but at least there was maybe some infrastructure in there to maybe repurpose the infrastructure that you had for the water meter, but it was taken out because a lot of people thought, well, we don't even implement it, and I think sometimes we tend to end up having a discussion and going that route, but it got taken out. And then the grant opportunity came out in late 21. We applied for it in 22 and it was approved in 2023. Because we felt that as emergency management was trying to get to water conservation, that it would be applied for. And then when the grant was announced, it was recommended by the previous CAO that we apply for this because water conservation is a key effort, which everywhere is going that way. So it got taken out. And for what reason, I don't know, but it did.
Counselor Charney.
Okay, I'm totally confused, but that's not uncommon. So July 21, it says to develop a water meeting implementation plan, and that's when it was removed. In February 2022, it says apply for the infrastructure program and that council supports the project. The amendment in front of us, it says the city has approved a project to install water meters in all residential properties within Merritt, not just new builds. It says all residential properties. And resulting in a meter reading on a global scale within Merritt, spelt wrong. So
Yeah, but continue. When complete,
when
continuing.
continuing the requirement for new builds to
There's your new
install
builds.
meters, yes, but the beginning says all residential properties, so we got a conflict here. It's not just all builds, we're going global and we're going all properties.
I would say no. I would say that this is new builds only. Am I incorrect?
So for this particular bylaw amendment, we want new builds to go back to putting them in as a part of the
I can
bill.
see that.
The ultimate end post is that all residential properties, just as all commercial properties now have meters, all residential properties will have meters. So the 3-point-something million, something,
5.
3.3 million is to implement those meters. So those homes that previously had meters that maybe were never read, we have to determine what kind of meters they were, whether or not they're compatible with the current technology, whether or not we're just taking the head off of them and putting a new head on, which is less than putting a whole meter in. So there's a lot of parts of it that we are talking about, and which is why the director's talking about doing it as a phased project. Is we're not going to buy 2,000 meters and then only have to do 500 meters, right? So we're going to do smaller chunks probably with a per meter kind of cost. And so the bylaw is to get new builds to start putting meters in instead of us having to go back later and put meters in.
Okay, I understand that, but that's first sentence there is saying in all residential properties. So we have to address that, because if we pass this amendment, then that means all residential properties. And I would like to have a financial breakdown of how much this is going to cost. And I mean, the cost to the city, cost to the residents, because right now we have just increased our water and sewer 25%. And now we're going to say next year is another 25% plus a water meter. So I would really like to, and I can understand, yes, I think all new builds should have water meters installed on them. I have no problems with that. But I think to this first sentence here, when it says all residential properties, I think we have to address that. And I think we need to have numbers for costs for both city and residents.
So the council, previous council was provided, sorry, the previous council was provided with a business plan, which is what they approved in order to apply for the grant. So that business plan has already been approved by,
But we haven't, but the
But you
business
don't-
plan was for approval, but wasn't for installation.
yes, yes.
It was for consulting.
No,
Develop a water meter implementation plan, not put it in
no,
place.
so you'll see that what they approved was based on the plan provided by WSP. The council approved the application for the grant and to forward with the project, move forward with the project. So WSP provided that business plan as the consultant. And
It's-
now we're at the stage where in the second set of motions is that they've approved the grant, that we would apply for the grant and improve the project being installing meters. So that was approved in 2022 by council. So that has already been presented and approved, and that's why the grant was applied for. And we couldn't have applied for the
Was
grant
this
without
for
approving.
all residential
Yes.
or new builds? Because when it says
Well-
supports the project, there's a difference between support and says, yes.
No.
We are going to.
That is the intention of that resolution, is that it's just like any other grant we apply for. If council doesn't support it, we can't apply for it. If council doesn't approve the project, we can't apply for it. So those numbers were provided for 2022, so obviously are a little outdated. But ideally, what will happen is that we will update the houses that have water meters with the money that we have the grant for. So in the end, all residential properties will have water meters. We also want all new builds to install them at the time of build.
For me to pass this, I need to know what it's going to cost, residents especially.
Well,
I mean,
And businesses, is it going to affect
It's-
the businesses as well?
Business already
Businesses,
paid for the,
commercial already has,
commercial already paid.
Not
for the
all of
water.
them, no.
Yeah, they
No,
do.
not all.
but we have already identified them and are addressing them, correct?
Can I?
Yeah, so that's already being addressed, the commercial part.
Councilor Chair.
The one thing that I wanted to ask is it's not like council was excited at last term about getting water meters. It's just that after the flood, with a lot of the fires that happened in 2021 and 2022, with water service reduction and also being told about our water usage in previous years, we felt that if we didn't go in that direction, we wouldn't be able to apply for other mitigation efforts. So nobody really wants meters, but to apply for the grant, we were given the project and it was felt that some houses are gonna cost more than others. If you have a house built in the 1940s, the infrastructure cost might be quite a bit higher, but maybe if you have a house built in 1997 that had a meter that's not active, maybe just changing out the head might be cheaper. And so it was a thought that overall average, that fund would be there to help some houses more than others. And it was jump at any free money that you can, always. Any money that you can get, apply for it now, last month, whatever you can. And sometimes these grants are applied for at the last minute with very little notice. And the staff have done a great job over the last 5 years applying for as many grants as they can. And they've saved
then
us a lot of
what
money.
was your cost to residents that do not, are
I would
not
have-
new builds?
I
What's
would
it
have to
cost
look
them?
at the report, but there are definitely some homes where it would be higher. So like houses maybe with no foundation or a wood foundation, like houses built in the 40s or something. Where a newer house in a newer subdivision maybe has an active water meter where it would just be a small improvement.
Oh, I can't approve it.
I think it
Councilor,
was a 2,000 average or something. Well,
Councilor,
it could be.
Councilor Egan.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I know this was approved, but I do recall when we got the funding last year that there was some discussion around this table that not particularly, or some counselors were not particularly impressed with the idea of going ahead with this rate at this time, because we knew that there was going to be increases already in taxes and user fees, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just a little bit surprised that this is on the agenda tonight, maybe without maybe having been discussed again in a policy review committee or in a council of the whole.
Well, it's real simple. If you're not happy with what's in front of you, vote no. And then we can come back and do whatever we need to do. But the point of the matter is we did discuss this last year. No, I don't know if you guys remember the fact, when I went to pick up the grant, we had no idea what we were picking up because we had no idea it was coming. And when I did pick up the grant, I did ask the minister if we could use it for something else. And she said, absolutely not. It's got to be for water meters. So I've never been a big proponent of water meters, but I get asked all the time, how come we're not protecting our water more than we are? So you know what? Suddenly, if that's that's a conversation I get every time I go somewhere about something. So if you're that concerned that maybe council isn't looking after the water, then we'll put water meters in. I get comments like, gee, I went to Palm Springs for 6 months and I've got this big water bill. But if you had a water meter, you wouldn't have that big water bill because you're paying for everybody, including the city leakage, right? So that's what I try to put across. It also helps with maintaining your water usage, et cetera. So that's where we're at. But like I say, water meters are never going to be a great conversation. And at some point, we're going to be legislated into it, whether we like it or we don't.
No, I just thought it had to be brought up and discussed again, because I know what we discussed last year.
Okay, Counselor, who's got the magic button here? Oh, hold on. Counselor Rogan.
Okay, thank you. So I just feel like we were under a misunderstanding. So I remember, Mayor, you stating that we had that the water meters have not been approved and we were going to be a public consultation for that. So now knowing that it was approved, it's like, okay, so what happened here? So what did I miss understood or what happened? So I feel like it's important, and sooner or later, I think that we need to implement them. So I understand that one. So I also did the research stating that there are just a few municipalities who are running water meters in BC, and they are also looking into what wastewater. So the waste, how we can treat and, utilize, for other options, wastewater. So that's all other alternatives that municipalities are doing. So I feel like that we should be discussing, that we should bring that to the table and understand what the public is how the public is going to be impacted before we move we make a final resolution here.
Vote with your feeling.
May I?
Yes.
Before the director gets in there. So the grant is for water meters.
Yes.
If this council chooses not to implement water meters, we are going to have to return the funds. The issue is that there are several reasons why we need water meters. One, not having water meters will impact our water license. Two, we don't know how much water is making it to the end user. So we know how much we make it at our water treatment system and how much we send out into the world. We don't know how much actually makes it. So there are places where if the water pipes are leaking, we would not be able to tell because it's not coming to the surface. It's rocky bottom, it's going out into the world. So there's that. There is significant inequities in what people are paying. So if you live in a 2-person household versus a 6-person household, you're paying the exact same amount for water. If you choose to water your grass every day during our restrictions, and other people are being very conscientious and being conscious of their water use. I definitely know people in this world who will take the water from the spaghetti pot and pour it in the back of the toilet so that they don't have to fill the tank up every time they flush, right? There's a lot of conservation opportunities. So what happens is that everybody is paying the same amount of water, but not everybody's using the same amount of water. There are very few places in the country, probably in North America, that do not have water meters for these very reasons. We don't really know how much water we actually need to make because we have no idea how much water is making it to the end line. So we might be creating more water than we actually need because it's seeping out into the ground. And so there's a lot of really important reasons for that. We also need to know, as we're planning our moves forward, what is the actual cost of water, which we cannot do without those meters. So when we set a water rate, we cannot make money off of water and sewer, right? The most we can do is break even. When we talk about breaking even, that's all of the operational expenses. That's the staff wages, that's the vehicles, that's the chemicals, that's everything. It's the maintenance of the facilities, but it's also all the capital replacement for water and sewer. So when you're talking about that $30 million that plus that it's going to cost to upgrade the sewage treatment plant, all of that amount gets put into the cost of water as we're moving forward. And ultimately what we need, and I know that Councillor Charney does not love this statement, but the users are the only place where we get money for that. So if you're using water and sewer, your responsibility is to pay the actual cost of water and sewer, considering our necessary investments in future infrastructure. So if you speak to some people, they're super like, wow, our water and sewer here is super cheap compared to other communities, because we don't have a real sense of the cost of water, because we are missing a part of the system. And so that's the essential part of the water meters. And I think Council Ogan's right, like, we are going to need to put these water meters in the next couple of years, no matter what. I will say that part of the reason we had the open house on May 1st was because the director was very clear he needed to start doing some community discussions and talking about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and try and gather data about what's out there already. How many houses actually have the infrastructure to host a water meter versus how much do we have to put into that infrastructure? If everybody's got the hookups but no water meter, great. If nobody's got the hookup, that's a significantly higher cost. If everybody's got a water meter and we're only replacing the heads of water meters, because those can last up to 20 years quite easily, as long as nobody tampers with them, then we can replace the heads. Some of them, depending on the program and the type of water meter, if the water meter's of a young enough age, we can actually return that water meter and get a rebate back. But we can't do any of that stuff until we have this data. And that's why the data collection has started, with the goal to be able to start putting this out to RFP in small chunks so that we don't overestimate the cost of the program. We don't want to buy meters and not be able to return them. We don't want to contract somebody for 5,000 houses and they only have to do 2,000. We still have to pay them for that 5,000, right? So that's why we're breaking it into small chunks, so we can make sure that we're managing it through the budget that we have, and recognizing that when we're done this, we still need all those new builds to put in their own water meter, as is would be typical in most jurisdictions. The municipal government doesn't come in when you build a house in most places and put your water meter in. It's part of your your build of your new house. So this is, we're going to get to that end point where everybody's got a water meter, and new houses, new builds must put it in as a part of their build. So it's almost like two different pieces of that, Councillor Charney, where it sounds like one thing, but it's actually like everybody's going to have one, but we also need all the new builds to put one in. So that we're not going to go back in 10 years and still put water meters into people's houses.
Director Green.
Wanted to give you just a couple more things. Very good job on that, by the way. Very passionate. Yeah, I got that. So the one lesson I learned this many times over many houses in the years. I bought my house here in Merritt, and on moving in, I discovered that all 3 toilets in the house were leaking, just running out the pipe. One of the benefits of getting good data is, and putting meters on, is people start to understand if they're using water when they shouldn't be using water. Something as simple as, right now, we don't have any mechanism to encourage people to maintain their toilets. We can lose a lot of water out 3 toilets if there's 3 toilets in a house. So there you are to the store buying 3 different things for $8, spending an hour putting them in. That's all it takes compared to the amount of water going out. So that's something I discovered in the house I bought, and I also discovered in about 4 of the houses I was looking at, that it was visibly water leaking out the toilets. And not on the floor, down and out the pipes. So something to think about when we're doing this. The other thing I wanted to highlight to you is, right now, this is 100% about data. What we're asking you for right now is the new builds, is basically repealing the bylaw amendment that made new builds stop putting them in. So we simply want new builds to start putting meters in again. The overall metering project is separate from that. However, council will have the choice at some point to how we adapt to the data we're getting. We're going to get these meters put in, theoretically, and we're going to start collecting data. We're going to start zoning in on where we're losing water. We can go into different zones. We have this much going in. We know how much is going out based on the meters. If there's losses, we're going to find this out. How you charge people for that is going to be a decision of council based on our recommendation. So I don't even want to talk about how you're paying for water right now. I want to talk about how we get data. I need to know, and I have a strong feeling we're losing a lot of water in this city. that we don't have control of. When we see a big spike in our water usage like we did in January, explain that to me, like a spike in January. Where's all the water going in January? Makes no sense. What does make sense is when things are getting in our coldest month between January and February, we had 7 water main breaks. How long were those breaks already leaking water that weren't coming to the surface? Right? How many of these pipes start to get cold? The pipes shrink a little bit, the gaps open up, we lose more water. If it's up in the clay, we're going to see it. If it's down in the bottom, we're probably not going to see it because it's all just going into the aquifer or into the gravels around the river, I guess, is where you go. And that's chlorinated water dumping right back into the environment, where if we flushed a fire hydrant, we'd have to put a dechlorinizer on it, so we're not quote unquote polluting. So when you think about this whole thing, I'd encourage you to think about this is a data exercise over how people pay for things. If we have good information, you could set theoretically the limit on, you know, everybody still pays for 30 cubes a month or whatever the number is, even if they're only using 5. And that's the imbalance that CAO White was talking about, is some families are going to pay the same as other families, or everybody's paying the same rate. You know, I'm a really low water user. I got no grass. There's 2 of us in the household. We don't use a lot of water, right? And yet I pay the same rate as somebody that's watering a 1/4 acre with a family of 5 kids. When you think about that inequity, that's not great for everybody. But it's on the average probably, well, it's the way things are being done. But think about the money. It's not about how we charge. That's a decision to be made later. We need data. In order to find all the weaknesses in our system, we need good data. And this is going to tell us that over time. And like CAO White said, to start, what we're asking for now is we're going into a new building season and more things going on. I don't want to have to come back and spend more of the general taxpayers' dollars putting meters in specific houses next year, the year after, because we didn't require it in new builds. At some point, if we're doing this on a global scale to get good data as a starting point, we need to have new builds doing their own contributions, which is put the meters in now when they're building them.
That's Richard.
When we applied for this, we figured that we were gonna be legislated to do the water meters anyway. And because Merritt didn't have it, Kamloops has a water metering program, which got a lot of backlash, and it's working for them. And so when we applied for the money, we thought, well, if we're gonna have to be saddled with an improvement per house of maybe a couple thousand, depending, the newer houses more, maybe less than the older ones, it was an opportunity to get some money that could help with the cost. And if we had to do this and eat the cost, it just seemed the way to approve it. I mean, look at the OCP change that we have to go through right now. So it just seemed like, even though that, like, I'm not a fan of water meters, but Kamloops is doing it, most cities have it, and we applied for the grant, we got the grant, and we're gonna get the data and do it the right way. It's gonna take time anyway. I'm not excited about a water meter. I'll probably end up paying more, but we were gonna be probably legislated to do it anyway, so that's why I would support this, even though it's, you know, who wants a water meter, really?
Well, just hold on a second. Councillor Hogan.
Yeah, thank you. So I have to say that this is one of the first times that I agree with CAO in many of her statements.
Are we on the air?
So, I don't think I think that the majority of us agree on that. I feel like the approach that we are doing here is not the right one. So, if prior council approved this, so I feel like we are responsible for the implementation on that one. So we have to have all the information. We have to understand what is going to be, for example, the financial cost for a new person who wants to build a house here. I want to have that information, right? So I want to understand water consumption. I want to understand how do people feel. I mean, I was unable to attend the open house. I was at the ER. So I don't know if there was an opportunity to have feedback from people about water meters. I want to understand if in the past council, was there any workshops to educate people about water consumption, knowing that if we don't change the way how we are consuming water, so we will be ending up with this water meter. So I feel like that's my responsibility to make sure that I have all the information before moving forward.
You, Counselor Charney.
Don't get me wrong, I know we have to go with water meters, but I ran on accountability financially, etc. I can't approve something if I don't know how it's going to affect the taxpayers' dollars. I have no numbers here to say a house built 10 years ago would be approximately this much. A house built 40 years ago is going to be approximately this much. I have no idea how it's going to affect the taxpayers. And I think that is a crucial part of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be accountable to taxpayers for their dollars. If it's a $2,000 bill, we announce it, oh, you're going to now be paying 25% and $2,000. Now, that is a hard pill to swallow.
That's where the
That's-
grant is to help with
Just, I
installation
haven't
of water
finished. I haven't
meters.
finished. I'm getting there. Okay, yeah, so I really want to see figures. And this $3.5 million, how is that going to be used? Is that going to be used to offset the taxpayers' cost? And that's what I want to see, how much it will cost in the long run. And if we're going to go this way, I think we have to give long-term notice so people can start budgeting for a water meter. I don't think we can pass this and say, yep, okay, it's gonna cost you approximately $2,000 and that's it. We've passed it. I have to have, I can't justify to someone comes up to me tomorrow and says, well, how much is it going to cost? Gee whiz, I don't know, but I passed it. You know, so I need to have some figures so that I can justify passing this.
So just give me a second here. So you're not gonna be able to justify it. Because if I'm living in a house of two people beside a neighbor who's living in a new house with 10 kids, we're not gonna poll every house in this community to find out what they're going to pay. That's what water meters do.
What I'm saying is I have to know approximately how much it's going to cost.
You-
I can answer this question.
Hold on a second. Counselor Baxter, you've been waiting patiently. I want to hear everybody's opinion first and then it's to you. Go ahead, Counselor Baxter.
I think this should be two separate bylaws. I think it should be one bylaw for all new builds. And then one bylaw for it to be all the other houses to be into it. Because this way, if we do new builds, because new builds would put it right into their cost. And that would be like, I'm 100% to put it onto new builds. But if we have it as two separate bylaws, it makes it way more easier for the citizens of Merritt to understand that we have them as two separate things, not like new builds and buildings together.
CEO.
So, sorry, this is one bylaw with different, we wouldn't make two different bylaws on water and sewer. This is a clause in a bylaw. So we can change the wording for the clause. We're just asking to repeal we want to go back to the way the bylaw was in 2021. So we're just, which is on the screen. So we're just repealing an amendment to the bylaw. And this is going back to the 2021 bylaw. And then I can answer questions about costs, estimated costs.
Counselor Egan.
I just wanted to say that in response to what Councillor Charney said, is that a 40-year-old house or a 60-year-old house or a 100-year house as compared to a house of 15 to 20 years ago is going to be very different. And they probably won't know until they get in to actually see what's there.
Mhm.
So it's pretty difficult to estimate.
So we can
Yeah.
estimate the cost of the meters based on the maybe Councillor Baxter's still reading that. So based on the 2022 costs of meters, we're using the 16 or the 19. What are you anticipating we're going with Neptune, correct? Oh, that's the RFP. Yeah. And it would be nice to know if we already had lots of Neptune meters, because then it would be more likely that we would just go with Neptune because we can just add new heads to old bases.
What is meter size in it?
So it depends on the size of the service, the pipes going in, right? So an industrial meter has a bigger meter size and it costs more. Commercial typically has a bigger meter size than a residential, it costs more. So really, we're looking at about $700 per residential meter. And as Councillor Egan said, depending on how the residence is set up, whether it already has a meter, whether it already has up-to-date services, or whether it's an old house that never had a meter and is in a crawl space, we won't know that until a contractor goes out and starts doing that work. So ultimately, what we're looking at is that $3.3 million is to cover the work that needs to be done, including the cost of the meter.
Councillor, hold on, Councillor Petrosi.
I was at the open house and got to see the different meters and could we have another council meeting possibly that you could actually bring some meters, educate us a little bit more about meters? Because not all of us were at the open house. Us, Councillor, or, you know, and the different size of
Well,
meters, you know, that type of
yeah,
stuff. So
again, residential meters are residential meters. So
Yes,
Our development servicing bylaw has said residential services has been 19 millimeters for a very long time, since like 1987. Lately, builders have been putting in 1-inch services to most of the houses. And obviously with the change of densification, as new builds go and we get more family serviced off of one roof structure or one out, we're probably going to see more larger services, you know, 1.5-inch type of thing up to 38 millimeters if it's doing a number of residences in the place. But for your average single family house, 19 millimeters, $640 for a meter, that number doesn't sound like it's moved a heck of a lot in the market lately. So we're dealing with, you know, that 19 or 25 millimeter for residential. Shouldn't be a lot else going on, because if it's an apartment building or something, it's already a commercial, should be already metered. That's where we're at. But remembering that what we're asking right now is just about the new builds. We're talking a lot about the program, the grant. That's not what this question's about. This question's about undoing what was done in 21, which allowed new builds to stop putting meters in. So now we've had a 2 or 3 year gap of new builds not putting meters in. And yet they've been being put in for 20, 30 years before that. And most of those meters are probably going to be fine because they have a little wire come off the side of them that needs to be run out to the end of the house. You can put a reader on the end of that. We may not have to even change out most of those meters that are still good in the last 15, 25 years. So the detailed costs, all we have to work off of right now is a business plan that was done when they applied for the grant. It included buying the better part of 2,500 meters. I can't imagine we're going to need 2,500 meters. This whole thing is going to develop in small pieces, probably focus on the places that should already have meters, get a groove going on that. A lot of the older places that are in the more downtown core, the older sections of town, they're going to need a lot more work. There's crawl spaces and things like that. Those are going to be a bit more expensive, but we want the grant to pay for that. The overall project budget, the business plan, I think was 3.8 in total, was it not? And less the grant funding. So there was an intended cost to the ratepayers to run this program. But what I'm hearing is if we get it right and the question well, numbers are coming down on that. A couple of other communities have gone to meters lately and they were surprisingly lower than what they expected. So yes, there's a degree of hope, but there's no way we're going to be able to pinpoint this. We did that contest and we got about 200 responses out of somewhere around 2,500 houses. So we're not going to get information until we get into something, turn the water off, go in, change the hardware out, turn the water back on. That's what it's going to take house by house.
Councillor Rogan.
So I would like to make actually, it's not a motion, or maybe to request to table this agenda item. So it's just one meeting, right? So I would like to review the business plan that you guys are talking about. I would like to review the bylaws. I would like to review, also have a breakdown. I want to have an idea. So if we receive 3.3 million, so and how many water meters will be installed? So what is going to be is there going to be an additional cost, you know, that the business owner will have to cover? I want to have that idea, right? So, and with that information, we can just make a informative decision at the next meeting.
So hold on, so you're talking about tabling? Do I have a seconder? Okay, so that's just on the floor. CO? No. No, it's a question.
I do just want to say that 3.8 million is the amount that is,
3.3.
Hmm?
3.3.
3.8 is the amount that's in the business plan, 3.3 is the grant amount. So there's $500,000 that needs to be in some fashion accounted for by the ratepayers, whether that be through reserves, ideally not, whether that be through increases in water rates, whether that be increases considered in our next taxation years. Those are the things. That is for council to decide. The budgeted amount in the plan was 3.8 million, and we have 3.3 million of it. What we're hearing is that based on that, that was for 2,500 meters. We don't know that, we don't think we need 2,500 meters because there's 2,500 residences in the community. We don't think we need all those meters, or we don't think we need all of those meters. So again, they come in two parts, bases and heads. Sometimes you just have to replace one part and it's fine, right? So we don't know, we won't know those final amounts, but we are anticipating, based on the business plan done in 2022, that there is $500,000 that has to be covered by residents. But we are trying to make sure we're being very conscientious and not just randomly going, or not just going out and replacing every meter. We are testing, we want to be able to test those meters, make sure we're not replacing ones that currently work and that will continue to work with the new system. So we're being very conscientious about how we've been talking about this plan, about doing it section by section so that we can actually have a real sense of what it's going to cost as we move forward. So, you know, anticipating there could be a cost to the community, but we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible.
Councillor Regan?
Just two questions, and they really don't relate. They relate, but they don't. Are we going to be employing locals to do this? Like, are we using our own crew, or are we contracting that out?
The generalized supplier, general contractor that's gonna be bidding on this will probably be, you know, what's the name of the company there? Guys that supplies the meters, they'll probably general this stuff, and they would be ideally using local plumbing contractors to physically do the work. They're not generally equipped to come in here with their own equipment and do the work. They're there largely to provide support, set up the network that we need, those kind of things. But we've got the RFP roughed in, and we want to see local context on this thing because it's a fair bit of work. We want local people talking to local people as well. So that still has to get fleshed out 100%, but definitely it's conversations we've had.
Okay, my other question is, is this digitized or digitalized
Yeah.
reading?
Yeah, we don't want to end up with staff having to go out
Yeah, there's no meter
and read
readers.
meters all the time. So yes, we're gonna set up a network that's gonna automatically read. We're gonna have information pumped right into the
So you, by doing it section by section, you should be able to see if there's leaks all along the way, right?
Will there be readers on garbage trucks?
No, this is gonna report automatically. We
Okay.
won't have to do that.
Okay.
That is one choice that we could go that technology, but I'm hearing that the technology where we're set up off radio systems reporting is attainable at the price. As long as we don't have to buy 2,500 meters. If we can get it down to 1,800 or so, we're probably really good.
Councillor Sharney?
So if water meters are installed, you're being billed on the amount of water you are consuming. So therefore, I would assume that your water sewer garbage bill will be affected. So right now we have a blanket rate for everybody. So your sewer and your garbage, water, sewer, garbage, those two would stay the same for everybody. And then the water would be
Adjusted.
varied for everybody.
If I may,
Yes.
nobody's assuming right now that council's gonna change the way that anybody pays for water. You could leave it alone right now if you wanted to, and we're collecting data. We're still getting value out of this. You can leave everybody on a flat rate if you want. You can do however you want with the rates. Generally, your sewer is a percentage of your water, because water in, sewer out. 65%, I think sounds about right. Usually is the way the sewer charges on volume for what you're doing, but nobody's set any rates. Nobody's giving you any information yet to say people are paying differently. The goal right now is data. right?
So you don't
When,
have-
when council makes a decision on, are you gonna pay by the cubic meter? Maybe there's gonna be a base rate of 9 and you pay for more if you use more than 9. Maybe you leave everything on a flat rate. That'll be entirely a council's decision on how they pay.
Could we have options given to us as, you know?
100%.
So that's,
Just
hang on.
because the water meters go in doesn't mean we start charging right away.
That's a me question here, not a Rick question.
Yeah.
So when we have this program in place and all of them, nobody's gonna start getting charged differently than somebody else until the entire city is metered. And then council will be presented with our recommendations, the CFO's recommendations, and mine, as to what are the schemes in which you want to do that. Most places have a base amount that everybody pays. And then per cubic liter afterwards, there's a rate that goes up. Now, then that also allows us to say, okay, well, how much of the burden do we want to put on industrial properties and commercial properties versus residential properties, right? So that's where you start looking at how do we balance out this cost to the community? So there will be no recommendation for a rate change prior to all of these meters going in. At that time, you should, no matter who's in this seat or that seat, from these two people should be receiving some sort of recommendation or suggestions for you to decide which one best works for the city.
Councillor Richard.
The only thing that we're really deciding right now is to just put it back into new construction. We're not even far enough down the road to even be picking apart what residence is going to be having costs and how much is, just like the mill rate with everything. I think we're getting too far into the weeds. We're just saying, if you're building a new house, put in a water meter. And because it's going to take us forever to get there anyway. I mean, KenGuard has been on the docket since I ran for 2018. It was a concern, and we're 2024. I mean, if we approve this for the new construction where they're putting the pipes in the ground anyway, and they happen to be putting that in, it's going to be cheap. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's all we're doing. We're just saying put it into the new builds. It's going to take forever anyway. Like, I think that we can address all these concerns in another, like what Councillor Baxter said, like we can address that down the road for the existing houses that are going to need this new meter and the work. Like, I think we're just, right now, it's just put the water meters into the new houses. That's it.
Councillor Baxter.
The water meters, when they're putting in the new houses, it's not a cost to us.
No.
It's a cost to the people that are building it, which is gonna save us so much money right now. So in the end, like, I'm for it, putting it in, because we can come with this argument later on and say, hey, look, we can figure out the wording and figure out that, where it's just the new builds we're going on for right now.
Okay, so I'll call the question on the table. To table, the table. So all those in favor of tabling for more information that you just got? Opposed? What was the count? 4-3? So it's not tabled? Okay, so that's plenty of conversation, so let's move on. I already read the first recommendation. Call the question that the City of Merritt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 23702024 is read a first time. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That the City of Merritt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 23702024 is read a second time. Councillor Etchart, Councillor Baxter, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That the City of Merritt Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 23702024 is read a third time. Councillor Petrosi, Councillor Baxter, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for the spirited. That's what council's about. That's what we're supposed to do. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sure. Yep, no problem. We will. Yep. Yep. 9.1, upcoming grant application. Recommendation that council direct staff to apply for the UBCM Asset Management Planning Grant. One recommendation. The second recommendation is that council direct staff to apply to the Infrastructure Planning Grant Program and submit applications for the large infrastructure inventory van, walking team infrastructure inventory, and for the underground infrastructure inventory. And recommendation that council commits to providing the overall grant management. Counselor Etchart, Counselor Egan, any questions on this? Counselor Charney.
Oh, sorry. CFO, how healthy is our gas tax reserve?
Financial statements tonight that the balance is over 3 million. And so that's the reserve that has to be the fallback for paying for our asset management program this year. So to the extent that we can leave as much of that 3 million in there for other infrastructure projects in the future, that's what we're intending. So we're going after two different grant streams to try and accomplish some of the asset management work. The first one got submitted last week based on email correspondence. The second one is related to that in terms of the level of information we have to gather about city infrastructure above ground, below ground, to be able to do all the asset management scope of work this year. So the intention is to try wherever possible and leave some of that money in that reserve for future projects. But we have over 3 million, of which asset management is a couple $100,000.
CEO?
Yeah, I think the total was 260. We did only get one RFP for the work, one return on the RFP for the work. So that's going to be awarded. What, in addition to applying for these grants, which I think we applied for $55,000.
Your mic, come please.
Sorry, Your Worship. So we applied for 25 on one and 30 on the other. So a
Yeah.
total of 55. Only one of them has a city co-pay portion. But again, we're ultimately responsible for paying the whole thing. So this is reducing the burden on that gas tax reserve and trying to preserve its use for other projects.
And then some of the work we're trying to, like the policy and strategy development, I'm doing internally to try, because that's another $60,000 or $70,000 worth of work that we're trying to keep in-house, rather than spend the whole $260,000 that we had allocated in this budget.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to notices of motion. Notices of motion, Counselor Richard.
I'd like to make a notice of motion to do a traffic study for areas around schools, particularly Diamond Vale by Clapperton and Douglas Street. The reason for that being with the high amount of traffic, there's a lot of residents who've been complaining about the high speed that some people do. With Juniper doing 30 kilometers an hour for construction, people are just concerned with the amount of traffic that goes by. 30 kilometers an hour in the daytime when it's a school zone, but once it hits 5 PM, because it's not a playground zone, the concern being the incidence of accidents or injury with a lot of children that use the playground, just for safety. And there's other areas of town as well.
Can you get that to CEO in writing, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to add to that parks. I live across from a park, and if anybody goes 30, I'd like to get a buck for every time. I'd be broke, because the speed limit there is 60 to 70 to 80 on that road.
Yeah.
So I think we have to start looking at our speed limits and enforcing them, school grounds and parks.
Playgrounds.
So I'd like to add parks to your.
So for myself, this is why we have our CMP, is it not?
To do enforcement. However, I think that what
They
council,
do have that little gun that says how fast you're going.
yeah,
right?
that's enforcement. However, that is how priorities are set. You can determine that you want that to be a priority of the RCMP during your priority setting sessions with them. But otherwise they will fall back on provincial set priorities. And traffic enforcement is very low on the totem.
They have the volunteers.
No,
No.
The speed zones?
Yeah, hold on,
they
everyone.
can't enforce there, like only the RCMP.
Volunteers do not write tickets. They
Yeah.
don't, they just give out information.
Yeah, so when Councillor Etchart is talking about that school zone in particular, there is an indicator, there is a section of the school, like the field that is not 30. So alongside that field that's not 30. This city relies for most neighborhood parks are actually owned by the school division. And so when we have speed zones that only go for the school day, that means that there's no no slowing down after school, after 5 o'clock. So when children are playing in our community playgrounds, which in our neighborhood playgrounds, which are primarily owned by the schools, other than Fairleigh Park and Central Park, all the other playground structures, I believe, are in school grounds,
Boat park.
but it doesn't have a playground structure.
No, it doesn't.
So when I'm talking about where kids are typically playing, we're relying on the schools because we don't have spaces for playgrounds. Like I said, we don't have a lot of room left to develop. So we have to rely on the schools, but if you're changing that zone at 5 o'clock, that means from 5 until dusk, children are still playing and moving through that area without the reduced speeds. So it might be a value for council to consider, and we'll bring you a briefing note, changing that time to a different scheme, whether it be till dusk, or all the time. It also doesn't, there's no 30 kilometer per hour on the weekends in those school zones, right? It's only school days from 8 to 5.
Councilor Richard. You're on.
Well, that was just my concern, because some people are just concerned with, what's happening in the area. And I think that having it like the playgrounds where it's done till dusk could be helpful. And so that's why I was concerned with that.
Councilor
Thank you.
Tiny.
I forget my gist, but it's the enforcement of it. And I don't think you have to say it's going to be a priority. We just want more increased trafficking. Doug Hardy used to sit underneath, we had a tree then, used to sit underneath that tree. And I'm telling you, he must have met his month's quota in 2 hours.
So-
Because he would just get it. So, I mean, if we just ask for more enforcement in our schools and our park zones.
Okay, so this is notice of motion. Why don't the two of you write up the motion and get it to the seal?
Okay.
That could, yeah. I think then that can go to a discussion between the mayor when he monthly meets with the staff
Most
sergeant, right?
Most definitely. Any other notices of motion? Moving on, reports from council. Oh, it's a big one. Hey. Councilor Charney.
Okay, May 10th, I had the monthly meeting with the seniors. They are donating money for the purchase of cushions for the outdoor chairs at the Gillis House. I'm not too sure how much it was, but they saw that they needed those cushions. There's going to be a garage sale in August, and that money is going to be used to help send seniors to the seniors games in Salmon Arm, September 10th to 14th. So if you want to go to the garage sale or donate, it's in August. There has been some concern about the city testing for water leaks. Now, when this was brought up, I was like, those, I don't know. I'll have to get more information. Apparently, the city is going to be testing for water leaks, Mr. Green. And there was some concerns of, well, what happens if I have an older house and my pipes and my house blows up, whatever. So I'll have to get some information from Mr. Green. But there was a lot of concern about water leaks. May 13th, Community Economic Development meeting, Chamber of Commerce. They've just completed their draft mode for their strategic plan. They have a summer student. The first Friday night market will be this Friday, May 17th. And the next business after business will be at TNV. Bailey House reported that in June, they will begin school tours. Emphasis will be on the history of the Bailey House and Merritt in general. They also have a summer student, so that's nice to see students working in Merritt. International travelers are beginning to come to Merritt, and the Bailey House will be open 7 days a week now until September 1. And the biggest exciting news, Mr. Mayor, you know, ice cream is coming back to the Bailey House. Yes, ice cream is for sale, but watch, you don't get a 14-year-old giving it to you. The museum, they had a concern for better signage in town, directing to the museum, etc. They have handheld recorders for self-guided tours of the museum, and these come in different languages. So they were talking about some of the signage in town that would have different languages on their directing, especially I think they were referring to the buses that come in and directing them to the museum, etc. Tracy, and I did not get her last name, I'm sorry. Tracy from, oh, thank you. I don't know how to spell that. You have to tell me. Okay, so she's from the Shack and Indian Band, and the band has greenhouses where they're using seeds from their own territory to propagate plants, trees, and shrubs. Right now, their goal is to get 7 greenhouses in total, and they are campaigning for xeriscaping. And the old courthouse, which is being purchased by CNA, will be a showcase for their plants and trees and shrubs that they've grown in from their treehouse. And that's it.
Councillor Egan, I already know what you're gonna talk about, so go ahead.
I go for it.
Okay, well, since the last meeting, I spent the entire week in Penticton at the Provincial Economic Development seminars at their convention. And it was really interesting. And when instead of printing everything out, all the slides and the information, I've sent copies of everything, most everything to all of you already this afternoon. And I'm sorry, Councillor Baxter, Cynthia, or CEO will have to send them to you because I didn't have your email.
We'll have to get you in.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured it would, but I couldn't get it up. But anyways, yes, and just a correction, the next Business After Business is this Thursday and it's at the Florentine. So if any at 6 o'clock, and they're having a steak dinner. So if anybody would like to go, you should get a hold of the chamber and let them know ASAP.
And it must be the next one.
DNV is the next one in June. It's Thursday.
You might want to think about that with the game. Maybe
That's what I told them.
uh,
I told Lori last night, I said, sounds all good. I said, but Tuesday's a game, so probably Thursday's a game, so I hope they have a TV there. She said she hadn't considered it, but she'll find one.
We'll get those funds up.
And that's all. I mean, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Councillor Richard.
Well, it was a busy week last week. I mean, we had our meeting last week, and then Thursday was the museum meeting. It's funny because Councillor Charney mentioned already the museum, but they have a lot of showcases that they're doing. They're getting more school tours there, so they're trying to really incorporate a lot of events and tours. I was hoping that we could probably incorporate something like that for the Silga, because just the information that they have there, the periodicals, just everything that they have, it's pretty amazing. And these recorders that they have for the different tours would be to help attract maybe people from other countries that don't, speak English, or they want to interpret whatever information that they have. It's pretty neat. They have periodicals that they have a mailing list for people, so it really promotes Merritt and history for people that have lived here in the past. And also I was at the ACTEV meeting that Councillor Charney was at, and there was a lot of positive input that came from different stakeholders in the community. So it's nice to hear that a lot of projects are moving forward, and a lot of positivity, and yeah, looking forward to maybe the community, the Business After Business events that are happening, I guess, this week. And hopefully we get to see the end of the hockey game too.
Councillor Hogan.
That's it.
Oh, thank you. So on May 9, I attended the Tourism Nicola Valley meeting, so everything is coming along. So I'm very excited about all the projects that they are working on. I have been working with Kamloops Immigration Services. They are planning an outdoor event here in Merritt on July 13. I heard today that the airport day is going to be on that day as well.
14th.
I was told 13.
No, airport appropriation days on the
Sunday.
On the 14th. Hold on, maybe I'm confused.
Yeah.
14th. Oh, airport day is 13th. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Hogan.
So I'm trying to coordinate to see we know what event we can move so that we have.
Well, to be honest with you, it probably they would benefit you, because most people come up, they're looking for several things to do on that day. So they do come up, but they don't stay all day. They maybe take a ride and then they go look for something else. So I don't think it would be a problem, to be honest. So
They have just tentatively booked that date, so that may change.
Yeah.
So, and the last thing I want to say, the temporary foreign workers will have already 6 months here in our community next month. So, and I want to thank you, the library, because they help us providing the room for ESL classes. And I want to also to thank you, Ellie Epp, Richard Wimbush, Mil Jurisic, Lloyd Charney, and Troy Regan, that they have been the ESL volunteer teachers. So it's been great. So
excellent.
thank you.
So for myself, May 7th was the councillor swearing for Councillor Baxter. That was nice to have a full council again. May 8th was McHappy Day. Councillor Etchart was there as well.
Oh, yeah.
I got to hang out the window and blab to people, and handed out 200 pins, so that was good. On the 9th, I attended the UBC Salmon Arena Enhancement This is a group from UBC that is working to restock rivers that are very low on salmon returning. I learned a lot of things. I did not know that hatchery fish are completely different from wild salmon, that they don't do as well. They're not as strong. They're not as vibrant. And I had some questions about the return up the cold water with the damaged flood. And I also learned that not all salmon return to exactly wherever they were born to respawn. They will actually take the easiest route sometimes and spawn wherever they feel like it. So they figure within 3 to 4 years from now, we should have a full spawn back in that river. And again, something I didn't understand, I didn't know, but it was nice that UBC came to present that, and I enjoyed it. May 10th, CAO and I went down to Mako Furniture to visit with them, do the shop tour. This is the group that we're really working with to get them to relocate to Merritt. Very impressive. The furniture is amazing. The lines are amazing. The workers are amazing. And we are really working hard to get them here. So it was a very good shop tour. I'm glad we went. May 13th, Merritt Community Forum. I'm glad to have that. We had a little less people than we usually do, but it was still nice to see. Coming up, May Day drag race up at the airport this weekend. So be there, be square. It starts on Saturday at 9 and goes till 9, so 12 hours. And then on Sunday, it starts at 9 and goes to 9. So yeah, 2 days. And there's a rain out day, which is Monday, in case it rains out. So
This weekend.
this weekend is May Days. And then, of course, we have a viewing party tonight over at the Civic Center, and we'll be on Thursday night, and probably we will juggle all the way through the playoffs to see how that works, and see, even though maybe our favorite teams might be out, we still may just do the finals. I'm not sure. We'll see how that all works out. But that's it for me. Have no idea. We'll find out. See you.
I just wanted to, thanks for the May Days and the viewing party. I was gonna say that. I do also want to say that people should be looking out. We are going to be putting out a contest for a community mascot character. So we're hoping that people will participate in helping to design and the accoutrement of a community mascot character. I know that we're getting that out to the schools before the end of the school year, so they can maybe incorporate it into some of their work. But I think that'll be a very fun project that will help to help us define ourselves as a little bit of a community. And that can be involved in many of our community activities. In discussions about the signage, again, as part of our economic development plan over the next 2 years, and we'll get into that idea of placemaking or identifying who we are and how we want to be seen. We will be putting some effort into multilingual signs, possibly with QR codes for different languages to translate signs, translate Indigenous languages. So there's a lot of work over the next 2 years that are going to be done on that. And I'm 100% sure we'll be having a call for community members to participate.
Thank you. Also, this Friday night is the first Friday night market.
Yes.
And the drag race guys are going to cruise down and bring their cars for a parade through town. And they're going to stop at the community market. So lots of fun things happening here. Dana, here's the schedule of events, just so you have an idea. So we've asked them to, one thing about the May Days, they have made a conservative effort to make sure that everybody gets pushed to town to buy food. They are going to have a couple food trucks up there, but that's basically for the people who are in the pits. But the rest of the people are going to consider or move into our community and spend money in our community. So that was the goal right from the start, and they're pretty happy to do so. So, anything else? Oh, Richard, you got something? You're on.
I probably forgot to turn it off, but I also forgot to just mention, as you mentioned about McHappy Day, because people were really happy to see as many people as they could. And I think Merritt did almost as much for donation as some of the Aberdeen stores, or at least it was really close.
When I got there, we were in first place in the competition. When I left, we were at 75,000.
Yeah, so it's remarkable. So it was pretty incredible.
So
Not 7,500 or
yes, we bought 30 cheeseburgers, so we always support it. And
regardless, it's impressive.
This is very important. I hope you all saw in the news the other night that Finn was eating Hunter. So we all know who Finn and Hunter are, correct?
Yes, yes.
Oh, Kevin. Finn is the Canucks mascot. Hunter is the Oilers mascot. So Finn was eating And I hope that he continues to
But
eat.
you have to forgive Kevin, he's a Kansas City fan. Yeah, yeah. He's one of the Kansas Swifties. And with that, we'll close it. Adjourn. Let's go see if that game